favourite chef, Elwyn.
You're supposed to cuddle me so much.
And Matt teaches me the finer points of the game.
I missed it.
Ooh. That's all for today. See you next time.
That's the same time tomorrow. And tonight on BBC One, all-inclusive in Barbados, Holiday 2001 at 7 o'clock.
Holby City has moved.
Find Jamie.
My son, find him.
To Tuesday nights on BBC One.
He hasn't regained consciousness. So when's he going to wake up?
Pushed to the limit.
Jamie, come back! Don't worry, Dad. I know you're going to be all right.
Could be a long night.
But have they gone too far?
It's Steve from the hospital. We've come to help.
Steve, hurry up. We've got to get out. The new series of Holby City, tonight at 8:05 on BBC One.
The state of Florida has paid $27 million for these curious holes in downtown Miami. But what have they actually bought? A UFO landing site? A 1950s sewage system? Or the ancient and extraordinary legacy of a long-lost people? The mystery of the Miami Circle unraveled in Horizon, Thursday at 9 on BBC Two.
Horizon, pure science, sheer drama.
This is BBC One in the South East. Now the news at 1 o'clock with Anna Ford and Lou James.
Downing Street changes its story about Peter Mandelson helping the Hinduja brothers. It now says he did talk to the Home Office about a passport for them. Fighting for the twins, the Kilshaws go to court to try to get the sisters back. Dealing with a disaster, Ecuador declares a state of emergency in the Galapagos. And Mark still lacks its spark. M&S has a bad Christmas.
And later in Newsroom South East, refugees from before the Second World War gather together to commemorate their flight. And £10 million could be slashed from the budget to repair London's roads.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Downing Street has admitted that Peter Mandelson did speak to a Home Office minister about an application for a British passport by the businessman Srishant Hinduja. At the time that Mr Hinduja and his brother approached him for help in getting a passport, Mr Mandelson was the minister responsible for the dome, which Mr Hinduja had shown an interest in financing. Yesterday, Downing Street denied that Mr Mandelson had any involvement in the application for British citizenship. Our political correspondent Mark Mardell reports.
Mr Mandelson originally told a newspaper that his only involvement was that civil servants had passed on an inquiry about a passport application. Downing Street told journalists the same thing yesterday, but this morning they admitted that Mr Mandelson did have a brief telephone conversation with the junior immigration minister. He had no recollection of the conversation, but the minister, Mike O'Brien, had remembered it. The Hinduja brothers are currently in India being investigated on corruption charges, but they were important to the British government at this time because they were considering funding the faith zone in the Dome. In the end, it got £1 million from them. One of the brothers got his passport 6 months after he applied for it. The Liberal Democrats say there are questions to be answered.
It's now clear that Mr Mandelson was deeply involved in this matter, involving himself in a matter which had nothing to do with his department, namely a nationality issue, and doing so on behalf of people from whom he was hoping to get money to bail out the Millennium Dome project. That's a serious position for him to be in. It's made worse by the fact that the government tried to spin this away yesterday and pretend it didn't happen.
Our political correspondent Mark Mardell is in Westminster. Mark, whatever the explanation for this is, it doesn't look good for Peter Mandelson, does it?
No, and it's clearly embarrassing for Downing Street to have to admit that they got it wrong yesterday. They say what happened was that Mr Mandelson just didn't remember ever making this call, but he asked asked his office to investigate to find out whether there had been any further contacts, and yes, they found that there was a brief, something like a 2-minute phone call, but it's embarrassing to get it wrong. And whilst Downing Street say he did absolutely nothing wrong, and Mr Mandelson's friends say he was completely blameless. There are those, the enemies of Mr Mandelson's, will say, well, isn't this yet again sailing too close to the wind? They'll say he's a very prominent politician, known to be very close to Tony Blair. It's known among ministers and everybody else how important he is. How would a junior minister feel if he got this sort of call?
Mark, thank you very much. Alan and Judith Kilshaw, the British couple trying to win back custody of twin girls they adopted from America via the internet, are at the High Court in Birmingham. A judge will hear arguments from Flintshire County Council for the 6-month-old twins to be made wards of court. Our health correspondent James Westhead is in Birmingham. James.
Anna, they've been vilified by the press and they've been judged by the public. Now it's up to the courts to decide whether the Kilshaws should get the babies back.
Going for it. They've lied about us, it's all lies, malicious lies, and we're still going for it.
Defiant and unrepentant, the Kilshaws arrived at the High Court in Birmingham, determined to win back the twin baby girls they call their own.
It's blackmail, and we're still going to go for it, because I'm not giving up. I'm fighting for everybody that's had the children taken off them via the social service in such manners that are unbelievable. People being handcuffed by the police while the children are taken. The phone calls I've had are absolutely disgusting treatment by the social service.
In the full glare of the world's media, they're fighting an attempt by their local council to have the children made wards of court. Mr Kilshaw insists even if they lose today's case, they will fight on.
But we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, there's options in America anyway, so we'll probably fight the thing in America.
But first, a judge here listened to officials from Flintshire County Council in a private hearing explaining why they felt the children's welfare was at risk. Social workers took the twins into care 5 days ago, following a transatlantic media storm over the way the Kilshaws adopted them through the internet. With rival claims from a Californian couple who also paid to adopt them, this extraordinary dispute is entering uncharted legal territory.
It's obviously a very unusual case, but it may well be that there'll be more instances of this sort of adoption from abroad because there is such a demand for children to be adopted and there's a shortage of children in this country.
The twins themselves are said to be doing very well with their new foster parents. But as the legal process grinds on, the Kilshaws' chances of winning them back appear to be slipping away. The hearing here only started before Mr Justice Kilshaw within the last half hour. This hearing will only decide the children's immediate future. After that, social services will carry out a full investigation before a full court hearing decides who should care for the children and whether they should be returned to America. Anna.
James, is it possible to assess yet what chance the Kilshaws have got of succeeding in this case?
Well, it seems almost certain that the Kilshaws won't get the children back today. The court will listen very seriously to the concerns of social services about the children's welfare, and they want plenty of time, enough time to carry out a full and proper investigation into all the circumstances surrounding this case, not least because of the welter of public anxiety about the circumstances in which these children were allegedly adopted. And every day that passes that the children are no longer with the Kilshaws, it seems less likely that they will get them back.
James, thank you. BBC News has learned that entrance fees to national galleries and museums are to be scrapped. It's thanks to a deal between the Department of Culture and the Treasury over VAT payments. Galleries affected include London's Natural History Museum and the Tate Galleries in Liverpool and St Ives. Our political editor Andrew Marr has the story.
Free access to the great museums and galleries, here people pour into the new Tate Modern, is one of the glories and attractions of Britain. But many others have been forced to charge. Labour brought free access for children and pensioners everywhere, but ministers have long wanted to make it universal. The problem has been value-added tax. Free access means the galleries couldn't reclaim VAT from customs and excise, making it horribly expensive to fling open the doors. But now Chris Smith, the Culture Secretary, has struck a deal with the Treasury, giving new scope to trustees of places such as the Science Museums in London and Manchester, the Tate at St Ives, the V&A, the Natural History Museum and the National Maritime Museum. Ministers have told the BBC an announcement is coming very soon. as Mo Molam seemed to confirm speaking to students this morning.
It's good to be here this year, because I think if I was here next year with the announcement today of free museum entry and free art gallery, it would be a lot of competition for this if you were down in London for the day.
And that's the point. Campaigners for free access say this news will change many attitudes.
The awful truth is that even modest admission charges almost always have had the effect of substantially reducing the number of people visiting these museums and galleries, and especially, incidentally, poorer people. So admission charges are just dumb.
As the general election hoves into view, all parties are looking for eye-catching and popular initiatives. It's been a long struggle to get free admission to Britain's museums and galleries, but this is an essential part of the ammunition being stored up by New Labour for the fight ahead. Andrew Marr, BBC News, outside the Imperial War Museum in London.
Catherine Marston is at the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester. Catherine.
Anna, this is the part of the museum that charts the history of Manchester's fashion and fabric industry. This is now one of the largest science museums in the world, and last year it began offering children free entry. That has seen an increase of 30% in the number of children coming through its doors. Pensioners will be able to get in free from April, but the museum would like to be free for everybody. Well, Patrick Green is the director of the museum. Patrick, what is it that stops you being able to offer free admission to everybody?
If we had additional grants from the government, that would help. But behind it all is this VAT issue. It would be really ironic if one arm of government gave us additional money, and we think they will, and another part, the Treasury, then took it away in VAT. And that's what we're trying to fight. And we hope that Chris Smith is going to be successful with Gordon Brown in this issue.
As I say, 30% increase in the number of children that you've seen coming through the doors. That's had a huge impact for this museum, hasn't it?
It's had a big impact because not only has the number of visitors gone up, also low-income families are coming to us in increasing numbers. And in a place like Manchester, where we have a lot of low-income people just a short bus ride away, we can play a real part in the community. So free entry and reduced price entry is very important.
And are you convinced that you would not see those numbers if you had to charge children?
We know that because we've seen the impact of free entry for children, both in school parties and as families, and indeed coming as groups of cubs, guides and so on. It does really matter to us.
And what about the impact should you be able to get free admission? Presumably very good, briefly.
Yes, it's going to go up. Our numbers are going to shoot through the roof.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, the museum's just spent £10 million renovating and providing new exhibitions, and it's optimistic that there'll be even more on offer here in the future. Anna.
Catherine, thank you. The man accused of handling Psh Spice, Victoria Beckham's stolen designer clothes, has been found guilty by a jury at Isleworth Crown Court. Mark Oliver, who's 20 and from West London, was convicted on 2 charges of handling stolen goods. He'll be sentenced next month. The Health and Safety Executive has ruled out driver error as a cause of last October's train derailment in Hatfield, in which 4 passengers died. The H&SE says the accident was caused by a broken rail which should have been spotted, and it says there should have been a speed limit on the section of the track.
The train which crashed at Hatfield had been running at the full line speed of 115 miles an hour. It should have been going far slower, the investigators now say. A second interim report from the Health and Safety Executive reveals there were multiple fatigue cracks in the rail. Some were up to 40 millimetres wide, others more than 30 millimetres deep. There'd also been extensive flaking of the rail surface. One area was 100 millimetres long and 30 millimetres wide.
There's nobody who's actually looked at this rail that didn't believe that something should have been done about it. I think that the matter should have been dealt with at an earlier stage.
Railtrack uses ultrasonic methods to detect rail defects, but the report says these techniques did not appear to have been developed specifically for detecting what are called rolling contact fatigue cracks. This meant that only cracks at certain angles could be found. Railtrack's now developing more effective testing methods. The trainee woman driver of the express is cleared of any error. The report doesn't say who was to blame. British Transport Police are considering whether to recommend either corporate manslaughter or health and safety charges against the companies involved. Today's report makes clear that the track at Hatfield was in a terrible condition. The cracks were numerous, they were widespread, and many of them were of a considerable size. Accident investigators are clear that Railtrack and Balfour Beatty should have done far more than they did. Simon Montague, BBC News at the Health and Safety Executive.
The President of Ecuador has declared a state of emergency in the Galapagos Islands, where the authorities are battling to minimise the effects of a massive oil spill. They'll try to stem the spill from a tanker that went aground off San Cristobal last week. 170,000 gallons have poured from the tanker, and it's feared the oil may now threaten the islands of Santa Fe and Santa Cruz. Our environment correspondent Richard Bilton is on one of the few Western broadcast journalists on the Galapagos Islands.
US Coast Guards, who were leading the cleanup operation in San Cristobal, say most of the tanker's 250,000 gallons of oil and diesel now appear to have drained into the sea. It is a week since the Jessica ran aground and 4 days since her tanks ruptured and started polluting these unique waters. The islands are home to dozens of rare species, from sea lions to the finches studied by Darwin. It is the threat to this environment that has led to the President's declaration of a state of emergency. That has been welcomed by environmentalists, who say any large-scale pollution in this area is a disaster. So far, the effects of the slick have not had a dramatic effect on the wildlife. Strong winds and currents have dragged the oil spill out to sea, limiting the damage along the shoreline. But a change in the weather could radically alter the situation.
Most of the diesel is going to evaporate and go into the water column and disperse. The swells are getting worse out there. We hear there's a gale up north that's going to create a big swell by Wednesday.
With bad conditions forecast, officials say there is still a very real chance of environmental disaster if the oil is washed back to San Cristobal. Richard Bilton, BBC News, the Galapagos.
Richard Bilton joins us now from the island of San Cristobal. Richard, what's the weather like now? Is it still threatening San Cristobal?
It is, yeah, and the weather has changed and the wind is blowing into the island now, but not with the sort of strength that had been feared. I mean, the weather so far has behaved just exactly as everybody had hoped. It's almost sort of saved the day by pulling that slick out to sea and not along the coastline. Then that huge catastrophe that looked on the cards when this first happened so far has been avoided. In fact, I spoke to the US Coast Guard a few hours ago and they said that the weather had behaved almost as the way that they had controlled it, although there has been some pollution out at sea. To that end, there appears to some wildlife has been damaged. The fishermen in San Cristobal this morning are demonstrating in the town. They say the lobsters they catch and the bait that they use has been destroyed by this slick. But the feeling here at the moment is, in the short term, almost they've got away with something that could be terrible. But in the longer term, that's what they're concerned about now, what the damage will be to this fragile environment.
Richard, thank you very much. The time is 16 minutes past 1, and later in the programme, Closing the Gap, how black children are getting better results in school. And could Michael Owen's injury problems threaten a promising career? Marks & Spencer's boss has admitted that his store's fashions simply aren't good enough. Luc van der Veld said much more needs to be done in terms of design and appeal if they're to gain the trust of shoppers once again. His comments follow the release of figures which show a Christmas slump for M&S. Sales were down 5% in the 4 months to mid-January.
The new look M&S. At this flagship store in Milton Keynes, the spring collection is under the spotlight. Bright colours, vibrant styles, designed to persuade shareholders there's change for the better and to tempt back disillusioned customers.
It did get a little stale, but I think they've done a lot to actually try and get round that.
They've worked very hard at trying to be young and old at the same time.
Very impressive. Haven't bought anything yet though.
There are just a handful of stores like this. Sales in the 270 others are falling. The company admits today its clothes have inconsistent appeal, and analysts criticise it for still sticking rigidly to seasonal collections.
The competition is very fast on its feet, gets in new product every few weeks, and replenishes good-selling products very fast. And Marks & Spencer's, a large supertanker, finds it very difficult to match that.
But it's not for want of trying. Though last year's radical ad campaign fell flat, as today's dismal figures suggest. Bringing the other tired stores up to this sort of standard, giving them all a makeover, is now a priority for the company, but there's a sense that time is running out. Particularly since more agile newcomers such as Matalan and established chains like Next have lured customers away. If there's gloom elsewhere in the company, at least some lessons are being learned from flagship stores such as this. But this sort of concept design is an exception to the rule, and it remains to be seen whether it'll be enough to reverse the fortunes of this British institution. Nicola Carslaw, BBC News, Milton Keynes.
With me is the retail specialist Jeremy Baker. Good afternoon.
Hello there.
At the new look M&S, they made a real active push for their core market, normal-sized older women, but doesn't seem to have worked.
Well, where they do change the store and upgrade it, then things have worked. The new concept stores, as they call them, have sales up by 4%. Their overall sales in the last 16 weeks are down significantly, about 9%. So if they can upgrade, then things go well. Unfortunately, they've got 300 stores. They simply do not have the money to upgrade 300 stores. What makes it worse is they're not facing up to that problem. They're pretending they can do all 300 if they just keep going long enough. Unfortunately, the competition is very much more focused than the Marks & Spencer approach. Each competitor, like say Next, goes only for one part of the market. You know, if you go to Next, it's designed for 29-year-old career people and nobody else. So those people are very happy. Unfortunately, with Marks, who are they going for?
Well, you're an analyst. What would you tell them to do at this point when things seem to be pretty low?
I think things are low, and they've got to get rid of some of the stores. They cannot have 300 upmarket luxury stores with beautiful design. They just do not have that money. They've got to bite the bullet on that.
And focus more.
They've got to focus more on particular aspects of the market and not try to be everything to all people.
Thank you very much indeed. Thousands of mourners have gathered in Kinshasa for the funeral of President Laurent Kabila, who was shot by one of his own bodyguards last week. Leading the mourners was President Kabila's son, Joseph, who is now the acting president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The first tests on stem cells from human embryos could take place within 3 years, according to researchers. Scientists have been given the go-ahead to carry out the tests in the search for cures for diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. The House of Lords gave their approval last night, despite passionate objections from religious leaders. Our political correspondent, Carol Walker, reports.
Clive Porter had to give up his job as a deputy head teacher because of Parkinson's disease. He believes last night's decision gives real hope for sufferers in future.
One of the opponents said, this lies at the heart of our humanity. There are millions of us out there with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or the other diseases, and it is our humanity that matters as well.
Last night, peers voted by a majority of 120 to allow stem cell research to go ahead.
Not contents 212, and so the not contents have it.
They rejected appeals from religious leaders and others for a delay so that a parliamentary committee could consider all the implications. It means scientists will be allowed to take master cells from embryos just a few days old and carry out further research into ways of developing them into skin, muscle or brain to replace tissues damaged by injury or disease.
Very few diseases are curable. But treatment, yes, and indeed stem cells have already been used to treat Parkinson's victims, and stem cells have been used for other conditions as well, in a very limited way. Once this research is approved, I think there will be a head of steam to try and look more carefully at what the possibilities might be.
But opponents say it's morally wrong and the scientific claims are unproven.
All of us want to see progress made in tackling the most terrible degenerative diseases, but there have no cures have been forthcoming so far, and scientific opinion is divided. Many scientists say you don't need to use human embryos, you can use adult stem cells, which hold no moral problems or dilemmas.
In an effort to reassure critics, the government has said it will ban the cloning of human babies, and a parliamentary committee will consider the moral and ethical questions of all this. But in the meantime, scientists will be allowed to press ahead with this controversial research. Carol Walker, BBC News, Westminster.
The poor performance of many pupils from ethnic minorities is one of the main worries of schools in England and Wales. But new government figures suggest the corner may have been turned, with black pupils starting to close the gap on their white contemporaries. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Navdeep Dhariwal, with the details. Navdeep.
Anna, only last year an Ofsted report came out saying schools were failing ethnic minorities. Today's survey shows that despite the difficulties they face, Black and Asian pupils are improving. 5 years ago, only 23% of Black kids, that's those from the African Caribbean community, were getting 5 or more top GCSEs. Last year's results showed that had gone up to 37%, which is a massive improvement. For Indian kids, 48% hit the GCSE target in 1996. By last year, that went up to 62%. So how have schools and pupils managed to improve? I went to a sixth form college where most pupils are from ethnic minority communities. They come from some of the most deprived areas in the country, but pupils at St Francis Xavier College are beating the odds. 80% of them are off to university and 5 have offers from Oxford or Cambridge.
I've seen what it's like not to be successful, and obviously I don't want to go down that road because I feel that people in that predicament, it could have been made much easier if they had the education.
My parents always encouraged me to do my best. You know, as a Black person, there are certain prejudices out there, and, you know, it's just kind of always been my ambition to do well and achieve what I wanted to do. My parents always made me believe that I could do so.
Teachers here believe it's a combination of cultural attitudes and the college's hard work that has seen this success. But it's not all good news because Bangladeshi and Pakistani kids aren't doing as well. There's only been a 5% improvement rate among Bangladeshis over the past 4 years. Some say their problems haven't been given the same profile.
And we can't deny that the political forces that have gone behind African Caribbean improvement and the issues behind that. The same sort of thing isn't going on, I don't think, with Bangladeshi and particularly with Pakistani children at the moment. They are really the children that have been lost in all of this.
But it does look like the government's drive to tackle inner city underachievement in schools is beginning to work. Young people whose parents have had unskilled jobs are also doing better. Only 20% got their GCSEs in 1998, and now that's gone up to 30%. But we've still got a long way to go because if you come from the professional classes, your chances of doing well are still twice as high. Anna.
Thank you, Navdeep. There's increasing speculation about the long-term future of one of England's top soccer stars, Michael Owen. The Liverpool manager, Gerard Houllier, has confirmed that the 21-year-old England international is injured again, with a repetition of the hamstring injury which ruined last season for him.
Michael Owen has not found his form this season. Liverpool's game against Middlesbrough at the weekend was again one of missed opportunity for Owen.
And Michael Owen is the latest to squander a Liverpool chance in this match.
Michael Owen's goal against Argentina in the 1998 World Cup made him one of England's most exciting prospects. He was just 18 years old, but the confidence has gone. He's now been dogged by hamstring problems for 2 years.
Younger players, if their injuries aren't properly managed early on, may find that these injuries recur right throughout their career, and this could be a long-term problem for Michael Owen if he doesn't look after himself and if the medical staff at Liverpool don't look after him appropriately.
Owen will now not be a selection prospect for England's first game under Sven-Göran Eriksson next month. Some believe he now needs time away from the pressures of the Premiership.
The lad is only 21, so I believe, when Michael Owen is 100% fit, he'll be scoring goals for fun. People saying all things that he's not as good as what he was, but I believe he will get better.
Liverpool have ruled Owen out for at least a month. The club say they need time to assess exactly how bad this latest injury is. The young player also needs space to rebuild his confidence and ensure he fulfills his promise. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
And at 27 minutes past 1, the main news again. Downing Street has changed its story about Peter Mandelson helping the Hinduja brothers. It now says Mr Mandelson did talk to the Home Office about a passport for them. The Conservatives have called on Mr Mandelson to make a statement to the comments. That's all from me this Tuesday lunchtime. Fiona Bruce will be here with more at 6, and Peter Sissons will present the BBC News at 10 o'clock tonight. From the 1 o'clock team, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, the last 24 hours have been wet and windy. This band of rain worked its way across us during yesterday, only turning drier overnight. And then by the time we got through to this morning, there was another band of rain already into the southwest, and that's been heading its way northeastwards as well, almost a repeat performance of yesterday. The wettest place has been in the southwest. Cardingham has seen 26 millimetres of rain in 24 hours, and there is more to come. With this amount of rain falling, that's about an inch, we have seen some problems in the south already. The River Dart is now on flood warning, and we have 51 flood watches across the south of England. If you'd like more information, the floodline number is there, 0845 988 1188. There's going to be more windy and wet weather to come this afternoon, particularly for Northern Ireland, parts of England and Wales. We could see the winds gusting up to around 60 miles an hour, so it's going to be pretty unpleasant this afternoon. It's all due to this area of low pressure. That low pressure will gradually head away northeastwards overnight tonight, but we're still going to find low pressure staying very close to us as we head through into Wednesday. Although I think on Wednesday the one benefit will be that we'll see more in the way of sunshine, because the weather fronts will be in the far north and back out in the west. So this afternoon then, wet and windy across many northern and central areas. That rain heading up into Scotland, northeast England and across East Anglia at the moment. Out to the west, here it will brighten up, but we will find some squally showers affecting South Wales, southwest England and southern Ireland. The temperatures today then around 7 to 11 degrees, not too bad on the face of it, but when you add in the effect of the wind, it will be feeling far cooler. Overnight tonight then, we eventually lose that rain once more, although you can see the weather front hooks its way back round into Scotland. So here it will stay cloudy with some further outbreaks of rain, and this weather front here will bring some squally showers across many southern areas. Away from those two areas though, I think we will find clearer skies, and here temperatures could get down to around 2 to 4 degrees. Now for tomorrow morning, it's going to start off cloudy and wet then across Scotland. Elsewhere, it's a return to sunshine and showers. Some of those showers quite heavy in the southeast to start the day and out towards the west as well. And later on, I think we will find another band of thicker cloud and some heavy showers coming through across western areas. Into Thursday, low pressure still close by, but I think for many of us, a good deal of sunshine. And then into Friday, sunshine before this next area of low pressure comes up from the south. Bye-bye.
She was the American dream.
The teacher who will be going into space, Krista McCullough. Thank you. That's great.
She was just a person that you felt you knew.
Witnessed by millions.
One of America's finest.
And liftoff. Liftoff.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Major malfunction.
The disaster NASA could have stopped. Challenger, go for launch tonight at 9 on BBC Two.
Now on BBC One, the news in London and the South East with Lou James.
Refugees arrive at Liverpool Street Station for a second time. Survivors of the Kindertransport before the Second World War commemorate their flight. And £10 million could be slashed from the budget for London's roads. Good afternoon. In the run-up to Holocaust Memorial Day, surviving refugees from before the Second World War gathered together on Liverpool Street Station today. Kindertransport survivors who arrived at the station in their thousands in the 1930s also aim to highlight the treatment of refugees entering the UK today.
10,000 Jewish children fled Nazi Germany for the UK during the 1930s. Most took the so-called Kindertransport, trains which arrived in London. They'd come to escape persecution, leaving behind families many never saw again. The refugee children were sent to orphanages and host families. This morning, the Kindertransport survivors came to Liverpool Street Station to remember their arrival here more than 60 years ago. The visit stirred up emotive memories.
It was confusing, but at the same time it was wonderful actually to have arrived.
We were very much aware of what we were running away from, and to arrive here in London and see in the East End, for example, Jewish shops, Jewish names, etc., was a tremendous change and relief.
There's also a political element to the commemoration. The organisers are comparing the handling of former refugees to those coming here now.
The Jewish Council for Racial Equality says child refugees in the UK today are offered less respect than the survivors of the kinder transport trains. It claims treatment at the hands of the British authorities shows the lessons of World War II have yet to be learned. Andrew Webb, Newsroom South East, Liverpool Street Station.
Well, Terry Smith from the Refugee Council joins us live now from Liverpool Street Station. Mr Smith, thank you for joining us. We heard there that today's child refugees seem to get a very different reception. Why do you think that is?
Well, the Refugee Council are clear that refugee children are children first and have the same broad needs as any other child. I think 60 years ago, the majority of support for refugee children was through voluntary agencies and within the communities, whereas now we do have a system where the statutory service providers should be able to provide an appropriate level of support for this vulnerable group.
So what do you think the government can do to improve things?
Well, one of the things the Refugee Council would like to see is some clear evidence of joined-up government thinking. The relevant government departments, the refugee communities and the voluntary sector need to get together to look at a long-term strategic plan. The reality at the moment is that the response to most of these children is ad hoc, it's reactionary, and invariably it's inconsistent.
Presumably, though, through a lack of resources.
Well, there is a lack of resources, and we're not here today to be overcritical of local authorities. And I would come back to the point that I've just made reference to, and that we need central government to provide a clear steer for how we respond to the needs of this vulnerable group.
Mr Smith, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry we have to be so brief. Police are hunting a gang of armed robbers who kidnapped the wife and son of a post office worker during a raid on a van carrying cash. The raiders seized the driver as he left his home in Bexley in Kent at 5 a.m. yesterday. They told him his family were being held hostage. Robin Gibson reports.
At a news conference earlier today, police said the driver and his wife and 4-year-old son are recovering from their ordeal at a safe location. It began here at 5 a.m. yesterday. 32-year-old Jason Watts walked out of his house in Joydens Wood, Bexley, to be confronted by 3 men with a handgun. He was told he could be shot and that his wife, Sarah, and his son were being taken hostage.
When you're taken by surprise at 4:50 in the morning when you're least expecting it, that is frightening enough in itself. Having a gun pointed at you and being threatened that you're going to be shot and your family being taken hostage is very harrowing. So the driver was made to comply with these instructions.
The police described how Mr. Watts, who works for the Post Office Cash Handling and Distribution Service, was forced to pick up his van and co-driver in Dartford. They then had to drive to meet a green BMW estate and hand over a large unquantified sum of cash in the back. Sarah Watts and his son, meanwhile, were driven from their home in a stolen red Toyota truck. The driver eventually let them out in Godstone in Surrey.
Our major concern is that the individuals involved are okay and to ensure that they return to normality as soon as possible. And we will be providing the appropriate support and counselling in that respect.
Police say the robbery was clearly the work of a well-organised gang. They say they're following a number of leads, but are appealing for help from the public. Robin Gibson, Newsroom South East, Dartford.
Motoring organisations are calling on London's mayor to scrap plans to cut spending on road repairs in the capital. The AA is angry that Ken Livingstone is trying to slash the budget for repair work by £10 million. They say London roads are already in a worse condition than anywhere else in the country.
In the short term, the mayor's plan could be a vote winner. There'd certainly be less disruption from roadworks. But if his plan to axe £7 million from the roads budget is accepted by the Assembly, it could leave potholes in his transport policy.
We are extremely concerned to learn that potentially London's road maintenance budget could be cut back by as much as 15%. London has the worst roads in the country, and it's very unfair for drivers in the capital to suffer these cutbacks.
The Mayor's office has denied that the cuts are intended to steer extra money into his congestion charging scheme, as critics claim. Instead, they had no choice, they say, after the government ordered them to pay for the financial overrun on the Jubilee line extension.
The budget for next year is predicted to be £71 million. Now, that is a small reduction from the previous years, but the issue is very much that we're trying to manage a complicated budget. The Mayor's all had a cut of £100 million imposed upon him for a Jubilee line overspend. Now, the Mayor's not responsible for that. Now, taking £100 million out of his budget makes balancing the budget quite complicated.
The exact amount of cuts have yet to be finalised. A decision will be taken on the budget by the GLA in mid-February. Darshna Soni, Newsroom South East.
But roads are just one challenge for the new Commissioner for Transport in London, Bob Kiley. Today he faced his first board meeting. Top of the agenda was the Tube, with Mayor Ken Livingstone stoking up the political fires yet again.
I know that the Prime Minister is very keen to resolve the Tube issue before the start of the election campaign, and perhaps as early as mid-February. So we may find, and I flagged this up, a much more rapid absorption of London Underground than we'd originally been thinking of.
I think Ken was in an optimistic mood when he said that, because while there are meetings going on, and I would say that that some real progress has been made over the last week, we have a ways to go before there's an agreement.
A 9-year-old girl died from cancer after a doctor twice failed to spot a tumour the size of a football, the General Medical Council has been told. Dr. H&SE told her mother to go away and stop being paranoid. It's claimed Dr. Singh, whose surgery is at Heston in West London, denies professional conduct. Well, our health correspondent Emily Cato joins us now. Emily, what more can you tell us about this case?
Well, it began in December 1998 when the young girl first noticed that she had a swollen stomach. Her mother took her to see Dr. Krishna Mohan Singh at his surgery on North Hyde Lane in Heston 3 times, but he eventually referred her to A&E after that, where she went on to see a cancer specialist, and this huge tumour was then discovered, and unfortunately she died later that same day. We heard from her mother yesterday at the hearing. Her mother said that despite this lump being huge and bulging, as she described it, she was told that she was being a paranoid mother, and all that was wrong with her daughter was diarrhoea.
So what evidence, in addition, have you heard this morning?
Well, this morning we've heard from Dr. Singh himself. He has denied one charge of serious professional misconduct. This morning he has said that he's been shocked and surprised by some of the allegations made by the mother. He's also denied seeing the girl on one of the occasions that he was supposed to.
And so what's due to happen this afternoon then?
Well, this afternoon we hope that the panel will go out and consider their verdict. If they do find that he's guilty of serious professional misconduct, they have a number of options open to them, the most serious of which would be to strike him off the medical register so that he can no longer practice. I expect that that probably will happen by the end of today, but it could run on to tomorrow.
Emily, thanks very much for joining us. I'm sure that you'll bring us up to date on that as the trial continues. The cream of comedy, theatre and dance are out in force in Leicester Square today for the prestigious Time Out Live Awards. They're renowned for spotting new talent in the capital, and previous winners include the likes of Eddie Izzard, Joe Brand and Lee Evans. Lainey Malkani is at Home nightclub in the West End with a preview of what's to come.
Lou, the stage is set and the champagne is out the ready for the 15th Time Out Live Awards. There are 16 categories in comedy, theatre and dance, and the Master of Ceremonies, Paul Ross, is with me now. Paul, this is as much a celebration of live acts in the capital as it is of the performance itself, isn't it?
I'd say it's easy to forget in these days of the kind of mass media just how much sheer quality there is out there that you can see live in London. There's everything here from classical music, we're talking opera, we're talking cracking comedy, music, venues, everything. It's absolutely fantastic, and the first Time Out Awards of the new millennium is going to be a biggie.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that you were actually a winner of the Time Out Awards in the past, were you?
No, if they ever consider a time-in category for professional big mouths and show-offs, I may be the front runner, but at the moment I've never received one, and it hurts, let me tell you, it hurts.
But of course it has to be said that you've done okay, so winning this award isn't the be-all and end-all, is it?
Except that if you're creative, I'm not really creative, if I'm being honest, if you're creative, it's one of those fantastic pats on the back, because once again, live performance these days can sometimes, it's not overlooked, but people can feel it's overlooked, and this has been a springboard in the path for some fantastic talents, but really, don't even regard it as a jumping off point. If you get one of these, you have arrived.
Now, of course, there have been some big names in the past that have won this. Lee Hurst is just one, isn't he?
Loads and loads, and you mentioned Lee Hurst. Don't want to give away any clues, but you may well hear that bald-headed name once again.
Well, thank you very much for that clue. We shall see how it goes. I'll leave you now to get on with your speech. In about 15 minutes' time, this room is going to be filled with London's finest. But for now, it's back to the studio. Lou.
That looks fun, and you can hear the results of the awards as they happen today on London Live 94.9 and on the website bbc.co.uk/London Live. Now on to sport briefly. Wimbledon, for the third time of asking, are hoping to progress to the fourth round of the FA Cup tonight. The Dons drew 2-2 with Notts County almost 3 weeks ago, but last Tuesday's replay was abandoned because of fog. Well, believe it or not, that game was beautifully poised at 1 goal apiece, although we're not quite sure. Well, now on a weather front, let's join Helen Young. I hope we're not going to have a repeat of that fog, are we?
No, you're okay. We've got far too much wind around today, Lou, to cause us too much of a problem. Although there will be some fog over the higher ground, certainly with our rain. And certainly you need your umbrellas because the wet weather has been marching its way in during this morning, getting across our region about lunchtime, and it's going to continue working its way eastwards. If we just zoom in across the region, you can see that that rain is pretty consistent. It started moving in from the southwest. It's certainly quite a wide band of rain, and there will be some heavy bursts coming out of it as well. So that rain will continue its progress northeastwards this afternoon. I think later on it will turn a bit drier, perhaps out to the west of Windsor. But temperatures around 10 to 12 sounds pretty good on face value, but actually with the strength of the wind, it will be a far cooler day than that. And then for the next few days, turning more showery. We should see the sunshine returning Wednesday and Thursday, but more rain into the weekend. That's all from me for now.
Thanks very much, Helen. Well, that's it from us. Have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Playing for a place in the League Cup final. Live coverage of Liverpool against Crystal Palace in Sport on 5. Tomorrow night from 7 o'clock on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Have you heard about it?
My husband calls me when it's coming on.
A quiz show.
If I was on the show, I feel very scared.
The presenter.
It's the goodbye, isn't it? It's the way she says goodbye.
The contestants.
They try to be friendly, but at the end of it, they are quite competitive.
That walk of shame.
I feel sorry for the person walking off.
The toughest quiz show on television. The Weakest Link, Monday, 8:30 on BBC One.
Tonight on BBC One. And a dark conclusion in Second Sight.
Focus on the boy. He's the key.
What's going on, Gov? Your eyes, there's something up with them.
And 6 nights a week, we'll be here with the BBC 10 o'clock news.
A brand new lineup tonight on BBC One.
The new Radio Times has features and previews on forthcoming BBC programmes and complete listings for all major television channels. Quincy takes on the mob in 20 minutes here on BBC One.
You'd make me a very happy man if you told me this little river was for sale, Drew. I could be very grateful.
Wait, check it out. Yes, my darling Dale. I'm coming.
Don't wait up for me, guys.
Can I see you?
Your reward would be plentiful as befitting the hardships you have endured. From Hercules to Captain James T. Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard, heroes have long had to prove that they are truly extraordinary.
Well, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. Oh, thank you. It's a little better. Wow.
Now, my hero, you can boldly go where no man's been before.
Probably just a bill.
Yeah, no, it was handwritten. I was going to open it in case it was important.
You better not. You've got to be kidding.
What?
Nothing.
Who's it from?